was just thinking, actually, while you were talking, Jem, you triggered a memory in me. I can't believe I didn't think about God of War and Freya, and also the character whose name I have forgotten, but it's Angrboda's grandmother, and how both of them express bitterness, and how the bitter, angry woman is portrayed in those games. So interesting, especially with Angrboda's grandmother being an older woman. Well, she's not actually a woman; she's like a giant, isn't she? But still, female, older character, and how bitter she is, and how she behaves towards her granddaughter. But actually, she does care, but she's just expressing it in an angry and bitter way. But she's also very cruel. In like our first encounter with her, I think she capture the wolves and kill them. I can't remember. She's doing
She
some horrible
takes their
things.
souls.
That's right. Yes, that's right. And then that's where they find the snake soul. Yeah. Anyway, so and that's a really cool level actually as well, because you're like tiny Atreus and tiny Angrboda, and you have to like run around, and she's like this giant, like from Jack and the Beanstalk almost. It reminded me of that so much. It was really cool. But yeah, that just sparked a memory in me of that, and then also how bitter Freya is at the end of the first God of War, and how that evolves through the God of War Ragnarok as well, is really interesting to think about, because there was the ugly crying at the end of God of War, and that stays on her face at the start of Ragnarok, and it's definitely one to think about as well.
I think there's the problem of there's noble anger and then there's ignoble anger. I think there's an obsession with women characters needing to be acceptably angry. That there's a level of anger which you go, oh well, if you put a man in that situation, he'd have to react the same way, rather than there's an entire, based on people's lives experiences, they're going to have completely different kinds of anger. And there's a kind of anger that women will feel that men can't experience because of the way the world is. And I think that scares and just humbles writers. So that's the problem, when you only have men trying to write women, they try and think, oh my God, what do women care about? And then
makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll try and do something around that. Whereas something that they do excellently in Last of Us Part 2 and God of War is they have unacceptable, ugly, disgusting anger that isn't productive in any way. Angrilla, is that her name? Angrboda's grandmother?
Oh yeah, I think it's something like that.
Gorilla.
I'll Google it just to make sure.
What she does is, spoilers for God of War people. So Freya is understandable.
Gryla. Sorry, Gryla.
Yeah. So Freya, again, spoilers. Kratos kills her son in front of her, the one who she has spent the last 100 years keeping in torment so that he doesn't die, and that's the most worst thing that could possibly happen to her. And she wants to kill Kratos, even though you can argue that she shouldn't kill him. And she comes to that decision herself. But at the start, you really get that really ugly anger if she's just
she's just yelling Kratos.
Just this complete, the unreasonableness of it. And you see that she really feels it right there then. And until she never forgives Kratos, but she comes to realise that he's not the one who needs to die.
And that scene was amazing as well, but we've already talked about it.
I think the entire game credibility rests on that moment where she decides to stop trying to kill Kratos. If she hadn't been able to sell that, then I don't think the game would have worked, because
Mm.
it needs that. So, but then that's her coming round, but she still keeps her anger. She says, "Oh, I don't feel anger anymore." She says, "There's part of me that will always be angry," which is, so it's not okay. But that. But then when it comes to
Gryla.
Gryla,
Yeah.
she's a drug addict. She is one of the last few of her people, and she hates the fact that her children meekly accepted their fate, and now she's all alone. And what she does is she steals the souls of animals and then puts them into her cauldron, and then just lives their experience for a while, gets high on the experience of these animals. And what you do is you break her cauldron, so she can't have her drugs anymore. And the horrifying anger and scorn and insults that she throws at her own granddaughter, who's a child, is just disgusting and horrible. And really, there's no nobility in that. It's that thing of, you really need to. That's an interesting character, because not all anger drives you to do noble things. And like with Ellie, she's got a legitimate grievance, but Abby had a legitimate grievance. Joel had a legitimate grievance. And all of this could have been solved just by a few conversations at different periods. But then they take their anger and they go, "I'm going to take revenge because I want to avenge my fallen loved one." But then when you start wantonly slaughtering people and enjoying killing people, that's when. So I still think The Last of Us is the most interesting exploration of a woman's anger that I've seen. So we talked about how women's anger is portrayed in games. How do you feel? So you said a little bit, Alex, about playing as Tomb Raider. How does playing these women's anger feel when you're actually there doing it?
You want to go, Alex?
Yeah, there we go. I think it feels quite empowering in some ways. Certainly the way that it's framed as like, this is the moment when stuff's going to happen and it's going to be awesome because now you're angry. That kind of thing, that kind of feeling is like the wind behind your wings, almost, to use that cliche. Yeah, it just gives you this feeling like, oh, I'm going to be amazing and I'm going to make stuff happen and going to make it right. Those kinds of feelings kind of, or at least thematically anyway, pop into your head when you're playing as the character, and it makes you want to push forward and do more things and just shoot some people and blow some stuff up. So it does make you more violent in a way, I guess, or violently minded, because if you've been engaged with the journey of the character, you're invested and you want to go along the rest of that journey as well. And that might mean feeling quite violent for a little bit of time. I don't know if you felt that way, maybe playing Last of Us, Gem.
I think mostly I felt really sad with Ellie. Just felt sad for her. But no, I think you're right. I think it definitely does give you that feeling of empowerment and like, yeah, I'm gonna, fuck some shit up, and it just feels, it's got that kind of energizing and momentum. And it's nice to be able to explore anger in that way in the sort of safe environment of the gaming world, because you probably wouldn't ordinarily you wouldn't see your real world anger through in that way, I would hope, based on the violent games that we all play. But so I think it's a way to kind of like explore that and see how that goes. Of course, it does depend, though. I mean, if the character is unreasonably angry, so I did get quite cross with some of the stuff that Ellie did. And there have been other characters where I've which I can't think of now, but I've definitely had those moments where I've been frustrated with annoyed with their anger. I'm like, and you just kind of get carried along with them. But yeah, I think it is a really interesting way to sort of explore that abandonment, because if you're angry, well, I mean, if I'm angry in my day-to-day life, like really, really angry, there's still a sensible part of me that's going, no, you don't want to break that thing, or you don't want to say those words, or you don't want to do that thing. There's always this, because I'm aware that my life carries on, and the consequences of my anger will have repercussions in my life. And whereas, like, obviously in a game you don't have that, and your character's kind of life is mapped out. So yeah, I think it's quite a nice way to kind of explore that sort of thing.
It's interesting that I think a massive element to all of this is the potential consequences that come with expressing anger. So if a man gets angry about something and shouts about something, I think, oh, he's angry about something. And if you were to, as you experience a lot, if you go and shout and express your anger about the patriarchy and misogyny, then that can cost you things. It's not as simple as righteous. It is, even though it is righteous anger, it isn't treated as righteous anger. It's not the same as, oh, they've just killed my father figure, so now I'm going to go and kill all of them. That's something that everyone can get behind. Whereas if you go, the patriarchy has done all of this, I'm going to go and kill all of them to fix it. That is, again, we'll come to this, the violence episode, another part, the consequences for expressing anger are. So when you say, I get angry and I won't break that thing, then that's, I imagine, a different kind of, I won't do that because of the kind of consequences that I would face from doing that, to compare to how if either of you were to do it.
Yeah, I just had a thought, actually. It's nowhere near as high stakes as like standing up and speaking out against patriarchy or whatever. But in a work environment, I found it interesting. I noticed when I used to work in offices, like my male colleague would swear at the computer because it was being a computer, and naturally you get quite annoyed at a computer when it doesn't do what you want it to, and he'd be like smashing the keyboard and all this and things, and like, that was more acceptable in the office than when I swore at the computer, and then my boss said, oh, well, you shouldn't swear, it doesn't suit you, or something like that. Or, or like, it doesn't sound right coming from you, because you're so quiet. I think it was said in a jokey way, and that was fine. I was okay with it. But I just noticed how different the reactions are. Like, very often in a work environment, if I swear at something, because I sometimes swear at something and I get annoyed, people are like, oh, Alex, how could you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I swear. What of it? You know, and it's just the different reactions to me. I guess physically I'm quite petite, so I guess people don't expect it from someone who's small and softly spoken, and then for men it's much more run of the mill and like normalized, and that's like nowhere comparing to like what you've just talked about, Matt. But it's definitely a difference that I've noticed in a workspace environment, and I guess that's a kind of not a consequence of expressing anger, but it's an observation that I've noticed, certainly.
I think there's definitely I think there's social pressure on women to be more pliable and more accepting in general. And I think that there is more acceptance of anger from men, but I do think that it's not as simple as that. And I mean, I knew many years ago when I was younger, I knew a man who never really got angry, and I said to him, you know, why don't you ever get angry? Why don't you ever get annoyed? Why don't you, you know, be more emotive? And he said that he was scared that if he got angry, if he let himself get angry, he would just get so angry that he would just get really, really violent and it would just overtake him. That he had this it was an irrational fear that he would be sort of consumed by anger. And I think that is a symptom of the patriarchy. I think that was a symptom of this idea that men are these angry, aggressive, uncontrollable beasts that, you know, just a thin layer of like decency is what, you know, separates them from that. And so I think that it's the whole conversation around anger, really. Our whole relationship with anger is quite toxic. Not this conversation, but society's conversation is quite toxic. I think that the pressures on men to sort of embrace this anger as though it's something that's a perfectly acceptable and in fact desirable thing is really hard for men who want to kind of buck the trend and don't want to be those things and don't want to be like that. And I think it and I think the thing is that again we see computer games where they reinforce this idea that, you know, men are angry, men are angry, and when they're angry they're violent, and, you know, if they truly get emotionally invested in something, that anger is going to turn into an uncontrollable flow of violence and misery and hellishness. And I think we are shown that. So I think at one hand, we're shown these men who are allowed to be violent, but they're like angry, but they're like horrendously violent alongside it. And then we have women who are angry, but they're just total bitches who are just out to like ruin everyone's lives. And it's extremely toxic, I think, but because we all get angry. Everyone gets angry, and everyone's allowed to express their anger, and not through hurting other people or things, you know, but we have to be allowed to express the anger and that frustration because it's a natural part of being human.
Again, I wonder if these two things are so, anger and violence are so closely connected. I think with men, anger and violence are like they overlap. Their anger leads to violence. That's the pathway that it takes. Whereas women, that isn't the case. Anger doesn't escalate and escalate and escalate to violence as a matter of course, because women haven't murdered every man, and women don't murder men. Women don't commit 50% of the crimes, violent crimes. It's just interesting. How do you think? How do you think male gamers playing women experiencing anger are impacted by it? Because the two biggest ones for me were Last of Us, and that felt Ellie's gender isn't really a massive part of it.
Yeah.
Freya, she's got really interesting anger, and I respect her physical resolve with it. Normally, I appreciate it. I appreciate just seeing women who just go, "Oh, fuck it, I don't care anymore," and then just do whatever terrible things they feel like doing. I quite enjoy that side of it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, really. I think when you've got a good story and you're invested in that story and the emotion, you just kind of get swept along with the emotion, and I think that's probably the case for anyone playing. I would hope anyway. But yeah, it's hard to really say. I think from watching Tom play some of God of War and things, I think he probably felt the same way you do, Matt, that he admired it, and I think he appreciated like the emotions that were being felt and expressed, and was just excited to be like watching it and playing it, and just really enjoying it, I think. But yeah, it's a hard one to say, obviously, because I'm not a man, so I can't say. But yeah.
I think, I mean, we're always calling for more diversity in the games that we play, and the characters that we play, and the people writing and designing those games. And I think that my hope would be that, you know, every time a male gamer experiences, you know, female anger, you know, that it's another example that women have emotions too, and women are entitled to share those emotions and to be angry, and which I would hope would then lead to, you know, being able to handle the emotions of the women in their lives in a better way. And I think that's what we can hope from games, from computer games, is that if they're written well and written with a broad audience in mind by a broad group of people, then, you know, they can help to educate us and help us have great insights into our own experiences and the people around us. Because I mean, that's what we've been doing since we were able to talk. We've been telling stories, and those stories have always been about teaching lessons, sharing information, and teaching our knowledge and passing that knowledge on. And that's what I see games as doing. You know, they're a form of entertainment and they're a form of education. So yeah, I would hope that when men play these female or experience these angry female characters, that it's a positive education, or at least food for thought.
Yeah, I agree. That's why diversity is so important. It just goes, oh yeah, the more you show how different we are, the more you can go, oh yeah, we're the same as well. So you don't need to worry so much and think, oh yeah, we are all in this together, actually, and maybe if we all work together, we can solve the problems that we all face, rather than
Who
not.
knows?
Who knows? Indeed.
I think do either of you have any thoughts as to where female anger in games should go next? What sort of should it? Does it? Do we just need more of the same? Does it need to be more specific? What do you think?
I think I definitely would be interested in seeing an angry woman who's not motivated by vengeance of some kind. That would be an interesting one, because that's all I can think of is that's kind of the bread and butter of many a video game protagonist, is some kind of quest for vengeance. So change up with that would be one thing I would like to see, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. I think just more people actually who are experiencing anger in a more realistic manner, for realistic reasons. I think that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see, a move away from the idea of the difficult woman. That's the angry witch, and less stereotypes and less use of those lazy tropes.
Yeah, I just like saturate the market with angry women, because then there can be 90 like lame ones and then 10 really good ones, as opposed to there being 9 lame ones and 1 really good one. Just saturate. Okay, that was I feel like we barely scratched the surface on that, but we'll bring it to a close there. Thanks everyone for watching or listening, and until next time, bye.
Bye.